I'm Amelia Gibson, a 35-year-old freelance journalist, a mom just trying to hold my family together. That night at my mother-in-law's house in Bozeman, Montana, we sat around her polished dining table for a weekend family dinner. The air felt heavy, like everyone was playing a part. My mother-in-law's smile was too tight, her eyes darting to my husband. He avoided looking at me, poking at his food like it was his only job. My daughter, 8 years old, sat quietly, too quietly for her usual chatter. Something was wrong, but I couldn't place it. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't react. They're recording you. My heart stopped. I forced a smile, tucking my phone under the table. Another buzz. I glanced down. 31 missed calls from the same number. 31. My stomach twisted as I scanned the room. My mother-in-law's laugh sounded forced. My husband's fork scraped louder than it should. Who was they, and why were they watching me? The story has only just begun. Hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next twist. After dinner, I couldn't shake the unease. That text, don't react. They're recording you, burned in my mind. I sat alone in my mother-in-law's Bozeman living room, the house eerily quiet, the air heavy with secrets. Everyone else was upstairs, supposedly asleep, but I didn't trust it. My eyes scanned the room, landing on a framed photo on the wall, an old family portrait, all fake smiles. Something felt off. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, and tilted the frame. A tiny lens gleamed in the corner, wired into the wood. A camera. My breath caught. Someone was watching me right here in this house. I forced myself back to the couch, my hands trembling. Who was behind this? My mother-in-law with her forced laugh at dinner. My husband who wouldn't meet my eyes. I grabbed my phone and typed to the unknown number. Who is this? What's going on? No reply. Just silence. Those missed calls stared back, mocking my distraction. I'd been too buried in work to notice, and now I was in deep. I needed to know what they were planning. The next morning, my husband left for work, my daughter was at school, and my mother-in-law was out at some community event. The house was empty. I crept into the kitchen where his laptop sat on the counter. I knew his password, his old college jersey, number 17. It unlocked. My fingers raced through folders, searching for anything suspicious. Then I found a folder labeled Work Archive. I clicked and my stomach dropped. Dozens of video files, timestamps stretching back months. I plugged in my earbuds and hit play. There I was in grainy footage, stepping out of the shower, changing in my bedroom, even lying in bed exhausted after a long day. Private moments stolen. My skin crawled. One video was different. My voice sounded harsh, like I was screaming, as if I'd lost control. I hadn't. They'd cut and spliced it, twisting my image into something unhinged. Then another video played and my blood ran cold. My mother-in-law's voice, low and calculated, speaking to my daughter. Your mom's too stressed to take care of you, isn't she? You'd be better off with me. My fists clenched, fury mixing with fear. They were using Isabella against me. I copied the files to a USB drive, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I shoved it into my purse and glanced at the framed photo, that tiny lens mocking me. This wasn't just spying, it was a setup, and I was their target. I paced the kitchen, my mind spinning. My husband's nervous hands at dinner, my mother-in-law's fake smile, they were in on it. But how far did this go? I needed to be smart, to think like the journalist I was. Whoever sent that text knew something, and I had to find out what. The Work Archive folder was still there, but I dug deeper, checking his email. My heart raced as I found a thread buried in a folder labeled Drafts. Messages between my husband and someone listed as C. Perry, a name I didn't recognize. One email read, "The footage is ready. It'll convince anyone she's unfit. We'll move forward soon." My stomach churned. Unfit. They were building a case to take Isabella away. I forwarded the emails to my personal account, my fingers trembling, and deleted the sent trace. I couldn't risk them knowing I was onto them. I needed my own proof. That evening, while my mother-in-law was out, and my husband was at a late meeting, I ordered a small wireless camera online rush delivery. It arrived the next day, a discreet device no bigger than a button. I hid it in the living room, tucked inside a potted plant near the couch where my mother-in-law often sat with Isabella. If she was manipulating my daughter, I'd catch her. I tested the feed on my phone, the grainy image clear enough to record every word, every gesture. My chest tightened at the thought of spying on my own family, but they'd crossed that line first. I sent another text to the unknown number I found to the camera. What do I do next? This time, a reply came. Meet me at the library on Spruce Street 2 p.m. tomorrow. It's Phyllis Gordon, your colleague. Phyllis, my coworker from the newsroom, the one who always pushed me to dig deeper on stories. Why was she involved? I didn't trust anyone completely, but I had no choice. I needed answers. The next day, I met Phyllis at the Bozeman Library, a quiet corner with shelves shielding us. She looked nervous, her eyes scanning the room. Amelia, she whispered. I overheard your mother-in-law at a real estate gala last week. She was talking to a lawyer friend, someone close to your husband. They're planning to use those videos to make you look like a bad mother to take Isabella. My throat tightened. Why? I asked, my voice barely steady. Phyllis leaned closer. It's about control. Your mother-in-law's real estate deals, your husband's involvement, there's money at stake and they don't want you in the way. I drove home, my mind racing. Money control. I thought of my mother-in-law's empire, her grip on the family. I needed to be strategic. That afternoon, I called a lawyer, Karen Holt, a contact from a story I'd covered on custody disputes. Over a secure line, I explained the videos, the camera, the emails. Start documenting everything Karen said. Get more footage, keep records, and don't confront them yet. We'll build a case. I hung up, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just fighting for Isabella, I was fighting for our future. Back home, I checked the camera feed from the potted plant. My heart sank as it captured my mother-in-law with Isabella, her voice soft but venomous. Your mom doesn't love you, sweetie. You'll be happier with me. Isabella's small face crumpled and I clenched my fists, tears stinging my eyes. I saved the footage, time-stamped it, and backed it up to a cloud drive. Every piece of evidence brought me closer to exposing them, but it also broke my heart. My daughter was caught in their game. I kept digging through my husband's laptop when I could, finding more emails from C. Perry. One mentioned a property transfer tied to my mother-in-law's business, hinting at a bigger plan. Were they trying to cut me out financially too? I copied everything, my hands steady, now fueled by anger. I wasn't the helpless mother they thought I was. I'd fight back, and they'd regret underestimating me. I had to stay sharp. That morning, in my mother-in-law's Bozeman home, I reached into my purse for a pen and felt something unfamiliar, a folded piece of paper. My fingers hesitated before pulling it out. The note, scrawled in harsh block letters, read, "Leave, or your daughter will get hurt." My heart slammed against my ribs, the words echoing in my head. Someone had slipped this into my purse, and my mind went straight to my mother-in-law. Her icy demeanor, the way she lingered around Isabella, it all pointed to her. I clutched the note, my anger outweighing my fear. No one was going to threaten my daughter and walk away. I slipped the note into my jacket pocket, my hand steady despite the dread pooling in my stomach. I needed to know who was behind this and what they wanted. I kept my routine normal, dropping Isabella off at school, with a forced smile, her chatter about art class barely registering. My thoughts churned. Why a note? Why now? I suspected my mother-in-law, but I had no proof, and accusing her without evidence would only make things worse. I needed something concrete to pin her down. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, not the one from before, a different one. The message was a single image, a screenshot of a conversation between my husband and someone labeled C. Perry. My breath caught as I read it. She's asking too many questions. Shut it down. My husband's reply, "I'll handle her. Keep it under wraps." My skin prickled. This C. Perry was the same name from the emails I'd seen, but who were they? And what were they hiding? I saved the image to my phone, my mind racing. Whoever sent this wanted me to know, but their anonymity made me uneasy. Friend or foe, I couldn't tell. I spent the afternoon piecing together the puzzle, my suspicion of my mother-in-law growing. Her real estate empire, her control over the family, it all fit. But I needed more than a note and a screenshot. That afternoon, my sister-in-law, Jean Carter, called and asked to meet at a park near downtown Bozeman. I hesitated. She'd always been distant, tied to her mother's side, but I agreed. We met on a bench by the playground, Isabella's laughter from a nearby swing set cutting through the tension. Jean's face was pale, her hands fidgeting with her scarf. "Amelia," she said, her voice low, "I heard something you need to know." I leaned in, my pulse quickening. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Jean glanced around, then spoke softly. "It's my mother and that lawyer, C. Perry. They're planning to sell your house, the one you and my brother own. They want to cut you out completely." My stomach dropped. Our home was my anchor, the one asset I'd fought to keep. Selling it would leave me with nothing, no stability for Isabella. "How do you know?" I pressed. Jean swallowed hard. "I overheard them at a cafe on Main Street talking about a quick sale to secure the family's interests." Her voice wavered, and I studied her, unsure if she was breaking ranks or playing a part. "Why tell me now?" I asked, my eyes locked on hers. "Because it's wrong," she said, barely meeting my gaze, "especially with Isabella caught in the middle." I nodded, processing her words. Jean wasn't my ally, but her information was gold. It confirmed my mother-in-law's hand in this and this. See, Perry was no bystander. I thanked her, my voice calm despite the storm inside, and watched her leave, her steps hurried. Back home, I pulled the note from my pocket, its words glaring under the kitchen light. I sealed it in a Ziploc bag, preserving it as evidence. They thought they could scare me away, but I was ready to fight. I tucked the letter away, my focus clear. 2 days later, I stood in the dimly lit banquet hall of Bozeman's community center, the air thick with chatter from my mother-in-law's business associates and family friends. I'd organized this charity fundraiser ostensibly to support a local shelter, knowing she'd fund it to boost her reputation. The room was packed, suits and dresses, mingling glasses, clinking, my mother-in-law's smile radiating false warmth as she worked the crowd. My husband stood nearby, his eyes darting to me every few seconds. Isabella was with a sitter at home, safe from what was about to unfold. I gripped the remote for the projector, my heart steady, but my palms damp. I'd spent the day preparing editing clips from the videos I'd gathered, carefully selecting the ones that showed my mother-in-law's true face. These weren't the distorted ones meant to frame me. These were raw, unedited, capturing her words to my daughter in stark clarity. I'd also found a new email chain that morning, buried in an account my mother-in-law thought was hidden. The sender was Constance Perry, a name I hadn't heard before, but whose initials matched the C. Perry from earlier. The emails detailed a plan to manipulate perceptions to paint me as unfit, all to secure their financial grip. I'd printed them ready to display. As dessert was served, I stepped to the podium, my voice calm but firm. "Thank you all for coming," I began, the room quieting. "This event is about giving back, but it's also about truth." My mother-in-law's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. I clicked the remote and the screen behind me lit up with the first video. It showed her sitting with Isabella, her voice cold. "Your mom can't handle you, sweetheart. You belong with me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her business partners shifted uncomfortably, their faces tightening. I played another clip, this one, unedited, her words sharper. "We'll make sure she's out of the picture." The room grew tense, whispers spreading. I switched to the emails, projecting them for all to see. "These are from Constance Perry," I said, my voice steady, detailing a plan to discredit me to take my daughter. The screen displayed a message. "The narrative is set. She'll look unstable and will control the assets. My mother-in-law's face drained of color, her hands gripping the table. My husband stood, his voice sharp. "Amelia, stop this," he shouted, moving toward the podium. I held my ground, clicking to the next email, one that named him as complicit Andrew. Ensure she doesn't suspect until it's done. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, eyes turning to him. He reached for the projector cord, but a local council member, stepped in, his voice low but firm. "Let her finish." My husband froze, his face a mix of anger and panic. I continued, my words cutting through the tension. "This isn't just about me. It's about my daughter, about lies meant to tear us apart." I played one final video showing my mother-in-law's calculated tone as she told Isabella I didn't care for her. The room fell silent, the weight of her betrayal sinking in. Her partners exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, others whispering furiously. My mother-in-law stood, her voice trembling but defiant. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, her eyes darting to the crowd. "She's twisting everything." But the evidence was undeniable, and her words sounded hollow. A woman in a sharp blazer, likely one of her investors, stood and walked out, followed by others. My husband tried again, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Amelia, you're ruining everything." I met his gaze, unyielding. "You did that yourselves?" I said, my voice low but firm. The projector dimmed and I stepped back from the podium, the silence deafening. My mother-in-law's empire, built on her carefully curated image, was crumbling before her eyes. Her partners avoided her gaze, their trust shattered. My husband stood motionless, his attempt to stop me futile. I'd laid bare their plan, not just for me, but for everyone to see. The room fell silent. My truth laid bare. 1 month after the fundraiser, after the gavel fell in the Bozeman courthouse, I secured full custody of Isabella. My mother-in-law's access was cut off. Her reputation shattered by the evidence I'd exposed. My husband was now entangled in a fraud investigation, his real estate dealings under scrutiny. Walking out with Isabella's hand in mine, her smile brighter than ever, I felt a fleeting sense of peace. We'd moved into a rental home on Bozeman's quiet outskirts, a fresh start, away from their reach. But I stayed vigilant, knowing their influence might not fade so easily. While unpacking the next day, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo of our new house stared back at me, snapped from the street with the words, "Victory is never the end." My chest tightened, the message a cold reminder that someone was watching. This wasn't like the earlier threats I'd uncovered, its directness chilled me. I glanced at Isabella playing nearby with her dolls, unaware of the danger. My mind raced to Constance Perry, the lawyer tied to my mother-in-law's schemes. Her resources made her the likely culprit, but I needed more than suspicion. As I tucked Isabella in that night, I kept my fears hidden, locking the doors and checking the windows with quiet precision. The photo lingered in my thoughts, its angle suggesting a car parked across the street. Sleep didn't come, my instincts urging me to act. While settling into our new routine, I searched the house, my hands tracing every shelf and corner. Behind a ceramic vase in the living room, I found a tiny camera, its lens glinting faintly. My stomach twisted, someone had been inside spying on us. I removed it with care, sealing it in a plastic bag, its sleek design pointing to someone with means like Constance. Later, I called Karen Holt, my lawyer, over a secure line, my voice steady despite the shock. I described the camera and the message, asking how to proceed. "Keep it as evidence," she said firmly. "Document everything, where you found it, the time, the condition." I nodded, locking the bag in a drawer. I also arranged for a security company to install new locks and an alarm system by morning. This house was supposed to be our sanctuary, but it felt tainted. I wouldn't let it stay that way, not with Isabella here. While helping Isabella arrange her books, her laughter eased my tension, but the threat loomed. I studied the photo again, noting the angle, likely from a neighbor's driveway. I planned to check the street soon, looking for anything suspicious. Constance's involvement seemed almost certain, her real estate connections giving her access to such devices. But why continue now after the court's ruling? Was she working alone, or was there another hand at play? After weighing my options, I contacted Mark, a private investigator I'd trusted on a past story. We met at a small Bozeman cafe where I handed him the camera and a printout of the message. "Trace this," I said, my tone resolute. "Start with Constance Perry." He studied the device, his brow creasing. "This isn't cheap," he noted. "I'll dig into it, but it'll take time." I nodded, my determination unwavering. The court had protected Isabella, but this new threat meant the fight wasn't over. I locked the camera away, my fight far from over. 2 weeks after the court ruling, while waiting for answers from the private investigator, I met with Detective Sarah Monroe at the Bozeman police station. I handed over the camera and the printed message, my hand steady as I explained their significance. Sarah's sharp eyes studied the evidence, her nod reassuring. "We'll take it from here," she said, her voice calm but resolute. She promised to coordinate with Mark, the investigator, to trace the camera's origin. I left the station with a flicker of hope, knowing the truth was closer to surfacing. Isabella was at home with a trusted neighbor, her laughter a reminder of why I kept pushing. After a sleepless night, I got a call from Sarah. They'd tracked the camera to a supplier linked to Constance Perry's law firm. Armed with a warrant, the police searched her Bozeman apartment that day. What they found stunned me. Files filled with photos of Isabella and me, notes on our daily routines, and records of my husband's financial dealings. Constance had been orchestrating a campaign to monitor us, her motives tied to protecting the family's crumbling empire. Andrew was implicated too, his signatures on fraudulent documents tying him to the scheme. By evening, both were arrested, Constance for violating our privacy, Andrew for fraud. The news spread quickly, their reputations in tatters as colleagues distanced themselves. While sifting through the aftermath, I realized staying in Bozeman wasn't safe. The next morning, I packed our essentials, my heart heavy but certain. Isabella and I drove west, settling in a small Oregon town nestled among pine trees. The quiet streets and friendly neighbors felt like a balm after years of tension. Our new home, a cozy cottage with a garden, gave Isabella space to play, her giggles echoing as she chased butterflies. I enrolled her in a local school, watching her bloom in a place free from the shadows of our past. Cutting ties with my husband's family was final. No calls, no letters, no chance for their influence to creep back. As I settled into our new routine, I felt compelled to share our story. Sitting at my desk one evening, I poured my experiences into an article for a national magazine. I wrote about the betrayal, the fight for Isabella, and the strength it took to expose the truth. The words flowed raw and honest, detailing how manipulation unraveled under scrutiny. When the article was published, messages poured in from women across the country, their stories of resilience mirroring mine. They thanked me for giving them courage, for showing that standing firm could break even the tightest grip of deceit. Knowing I'd inspired others made the scars worthwhile. Reflecting on the ordeal, I learned that truth and persistence could dismantle even the most calculated plans. But I also understood that enemies rarely vanish completely. Their motives linger, waiting for a crack to slip through. I kept our new address private, used secure lines for communication, and stayed alert for anything unusual. Isabella's safety was my priority, and I'd never let my guard down again. The arrests had ended one chapter, but vigilance would shape our future. I closed my laptop, ready for our new life.
"I'm not sure what you're suggesting, Prudence," Mark said, his voice tight as he set down his coffee mug with deliberate control. "I'm your husband, not some financial predator. All I'm asking is why you won't add me to your new investment account," I replied, keeping my tone even despite the familiar tension building between us. "We've always maintained transparency with our finances." He sighed dramatically. "It's just a small side portfolio I'm experimenting with. Not everything needs to be a joint venture. His tone shifted, softening into something almost patronizing. You've never shown much interest in investment strategy before. Suddenly you're concerned about asset allocation. I held his gaze across our kitchen island, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows of our Seattle home, illuminating the growing distance between us. I'm concerned about the secretiveness, Mark. First the locked phone, then the private email account, now separate finances. These aren't the actions of someone with nothing to hide. His face hardened. After 15 years, I think I've earned a little privacy. If you can't trust me with something as basic as managing some investments without your supervision, maybe we have bigger problems. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. I'm late for work. We can continue this conversation about your trust issues another time. The front door closed with a decisive click, leaving me alone with my cooling tea and churning thoughts. My name is Prudence Westfield, 43 years old, a risk management consultant for insurance companies. I've built my career on identifying potential threats and creating protective measures before disaster strikes. My colleagues call me Prudence the Prescient for my ability to anticipate problems before they materialize. Ironic, then, that I'd been caught so off guard in my own marriage. Mark and I had met at a financial technology conference 16 years ago. He was charming, ambitious, and shared my appreciation for careful planning. We married a year later, built successful careers, and created a life that was comfortable, if not passionate. We'd decided early on not to have children, focusing instead on our professional goals and comfortable lifestyle. For 14 years, our partnership had functioned efficiently, like a well-managed investment portfolio, balanced, predictable, secure. Until 6 months ago, when Mark's behavior began to change in subtle but unmistakable ways. I pulled out my laptop and checked our joint account balances. Still healthy, no unusual withdrawals. Perhaps I was overreacting. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation for Mark's newfound secrecy. My phone buzzed with a security alert from our home monitoring system. I opened the app to see footage from last night, captured at 4:13 a.m. Mark standing over my desk, photographing my personal banking documents with his phone, his face illuminated by the blue light of his screen. Something cold settled in my stomach. This was worse than I had imagined. I've always been cautious with money, a trait inherited from my father, who lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis. I watched my parents' 30-year marriage collapse under the strain of financial ruin, my mother unable to forgive my father for not protecting them better. Always have your own safety net, she told me repeatedly during their bitter divorce, no matter how much you love someone. It was advice I had taken to heart, maintaining my own separate accounts even after marrying Mark. We shared joint accounts for household expenses and major purchases, but my personal savings, investments, and retirement funds remained solely in my name. Mark had similar arrangements, a system that had worked well for us, balancing togetherness with individual financial autonomy. Mark's background couldn't have been more different from mine. Raised in affluence by parents who indulged his every whim, he'd grown accustomed to material comfort. Still, he'd worked hard to build his career as a financial technology consultant, and I'd always respected his work ethic. His occasional impulsive purchases, the vintage motorcycle, the unnecessary upgrades to his home office, seemed harmless enough. We could afford his indulgences, and everyone deserves some pleasures. About 6 months ago, subtle changes began to appear. Mark started working later, keeping his computer screen angled away from me. He became defensive when I asked simple questions about household expenses. Then came the separate credit card I discovered accidentally while organizing tax documents, one I'd never seen before, with significant monthly payments from our joint account. "It's for work expenses," he explained dismissively. "The company reimburses me. Nothing for you to worry about." I trusted him, despite the faint alarm bells. After all, we'd built a life together based on mutual respect and honesty. Or so I believed. 3 months ago, the locked phone password appeared. 2 months ago, he started receiving mail at a P.O. box rather than our home address. 6 weeks ago, he began withdrawing unusual amounts of cash, $500 here, $700 there, just below the threshold that would trigger our joint account's large withdrawal alert. Investment opportunities, he explained vaguely when I inquired. Sometimes you need liquidity for the right moment. I nodded and pretended to accept his explanations, but privately I began paying closer attention. I installed a more sophisticated home security system with night vision cameras, citing recent break-ins in our neighborhood. I created elaborate spreadsheets tracking our finances, noting every discrepancy, every unexplained expense. I didn't want to believe my husband was deceiving me, but my professional instincts had been honed by years of identifying patterns of fraud. And Mark's behavior was setting off every alarm in my mental detection system. Still, I waited, gathering information, looking for concrete evidence before confronting him. I needed to be certain before accusing the man I'd shared my life with of betrayal. The 4 a.m. security footage of Mark photographing my banking information changed everything. No rational explanation could justify such behavior. I watched the clip repeatedly, studying his methodical movements as he sorted through my papers, carefully photographed my account numbers, passwords written in my personal shorthand, and monthly statements. That morning, after Mark left for work, I locked myself in my home office and began a comprehensive audit of all our financial accounts. Everything appeared normal at first glance. No unexplained transfers from our joint savings, no unusual credit card charges. But when I dug deeper into my personal accounts, the ones whose details Mark had photographed, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Someone had attempted to add a new user to my primary savings account, an authorized user with full access privileges. The request had been made online, using my credentials, but was pending approval via a confirmation process that required a phone call from the bank, a call I had not yet received. My hands trembled as I dialed the bank's fraud department. The friendly representative confirmed my suspicions. A change request had been initiated the previous day, attempting to add Mark as an account holder with full privileges. "Would you like to approve this request, Ms. Westfield?" she asked. "Absolutely not," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "In fact, I need to report potential identity theft. I did not initiate this request." The implications were staggering. Mark wasn't just being secretive. He was actively attempting to gain access to my personal assets without my knowledge or consent. The betrayal cut deep, leaving me breathless with its magnitude. The bank representative was efficient and compassionate, helping me lock down my accounts, change all passwords, and place fraud alerts on my credit. "You should file a police report," she advised. "Even if you don't want to press charges, it creates an official record of the incident." I thanked her but hesitated. Filing a police report against my own husband seemed like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Despite everything, some part of me still hoped for an explanation, some misunderstanding that could salvage the ruins of our marriage. That evening, I confronted Mark. "Someone tried to add an authorized user to my personal savings account," I said carefully, watching his reaction over dinner. The bank flagged it as suspicious. His fork paused midway to his mouth, a flicker of something, surprise, alarm, crossing his face before he composed himself. "That's concerning. Did they say who?" The lie came so smoothly that I almost doubted what I knew to be true. Almost. "They're investigating," I replied, matching his casual tone. "I've changed all my passwords just to be safe." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Good idea. Can't be too careful these days." That night I lay awake beside him, listening to his even breathing, wondering how well I truly knew the man I'd married. What else was he planning? How far would he go? And perhaps most troublingly, why now, after 15 years of apparent contentment? I needed answers, and I needed protection. The next morning, I would take steps to secure my finances against whatever Mark was planning. This was no longer about saving my marriage. It was about saving myself. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Once Mark left, briefcase in hand and a perfunctory kiss on my cheek, I sprang into action. My first call was to Diane Blackwood, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on several fraud cases through my consulting business. Financial deception between spouses is unfortunately common, Diane said after I explained the situation. But attempting to gain unauthorized access to accounts is crossing into potential criminal territory. We need to move quickly. With Diane's guidance, I spent the day implementing financial safeguards. I moved funds from my compromised accounts to new ones at different banks. I froze my credit, changed every password, and set up advanced two-factor authentication on all accounts. I gathered all important financial documents and secured them in a safe deposit box at a bank where Mark and I had no relationship. "What about your joint accounts?" Diane asked during our follow-up call. "I've left them untouched for now," I replied. "I don't want to alert him that I'm onto his plans." "Smart," she approved. "We can monitor those accounts for unusual activity. If he thinks he's about to gain access to your personal savings, he might get careless with the joint funds." I also reached out to Jonathan Lewis, an attorney specializing in financial fraud. His advice was blunt. Document everything. Start building a case now, even if you're not sure where this is heading, and consider setting up a decoy. A decoy? A financial honeypot, he explained. A dummy account that appears valuable but contains limited funds. If he attempts to access it, you'll have irrefutable evidence of intent. Following his advice, I established new accounts with modest balances, enough to appear valuable, but not catastrophic if compromised. I deliberately left information about these accounts where Mark might discover it, complete with passwords written in the same shorthand system he'd photographed. For 2 weeks, I maintained a facade of normalcy while monitoring our finances obsessively. Mark seemed to notice nothing amiss, though he was increasingly absent, citing late meetings and client dinners. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of unsuspecting wife while privately documenting his every suspicious move. Then came the first unauthorized transaction, a $3,200 charge for a weekend at a luxury resort in Napa Valley, charged to one of my decoy credit cards. The reservation was for the following month, for 2 people. My name was not on the booking. When I casually mentioned I might join him for a work conference that same weekend, Mark didn't even blink. Bad timing, unfortunately. I'll be in back-to-back meetings with potential clients. Wouldn't see much of me anyway. The lies were becoming more brazen, yet confronting him directly seemed premature. Diane and Jonathan both advised patience, building an airtight case before making any accusations. "He hasn't accessed the main decoy account yet," Diane noted during our weekly check-in. "The credit card charges, while concerning, could be explained away as mistakes or misunderstandings. We need something definitive." I agreed but found the waiting excruciating. Who was the second person on the Napa reservation? Was Mark planning to leave me once he secured access to my finances? The uncertainty gnawed at me, making sleep elusive and concentration difficult. Then, 3 weeks after discovering Mark's late-night photography session, I received an alert I'd been both expecting and dreading: a login attempt on my primary decoy account, followed by a transfer request for $65,000 to an unfamiliar account number. The trap had been sprung. Now I needed to discover just how deep Mark's betrayal went before confronting him with what I knew. But I'd underestimated his boldness, and the speed with which he would act once he believed he had access to my funds. The $65,000 transfer from my decoy account was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, a flurry of activity emptied the account: $12,000 for high-end electronics, $8,500 at designer boutiques, $3,500 for first-class airline tickets to Cabo San Lucas. The spending was frenzied and reckless, as if Mark feared the access might be revoked at any moment. Throughout it all, he maintained an impeccable facade at home. We shared meals, watched movies together, even made plans for a weekend getaway to celebrate our upcoming anniversary. The disconnect between his actions and his demeanor was dizzying. "He's escalating faster than we anticipated," Diane observed as we reviewed the latest transactions. This isn't just opportunistic spending. It's systematic liquidation. The question is, why now? Jonathan mused during our conference call. After 15 years of marriage, what triggered this sudden financial attack? That question haunted me. Mark's behavior had changed 6 months ago, but something specific must have prompted his decision to actually steal from me. I began investigating Mark with the same methodical thoroughness I applied to my professional cases. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While organizing our home office, a task Mark always avoided, I discovered a hidden file folder tucked behind our reference books. Inside was a stack of medical documents, diagnostic reports, treatment recommendations, and insurance claims, all dated approximately 6 months ago. Mark had cancer, specifically a rare form of lymphoma that required aggressive and expensive treatment. Treatment his insurance would only partially cover, with estimated out-of-pocket costs exceeding $200,000. My mind reeled. Why hadn't he told me? We had the financial resources to handle this together. Instead, he'd chosen deception and theft over honesty with his wife of 15 years. I contacted Mark's doctor, presenting myself as his wife handling insurance matters. The receptionist was helpful. Mr. Westfield has been responding well to treatment. His last checkup showed significant improvement, though of course he'll need to continue the maintenance protocol. And the experimental treatment he was considering? I asked, fishing for information. Oh, he decided to proceed with that next month. It's not covered by insurance, of course, but he said financing wouldn't be an issue. Because he planned to finance it with my money. The realization was like a physical blow. I shared my discovery with Diane and Jonathan that evening. This changes everything, Jonathan said gravely. His motivation might generate sympathy, but the method remains criminal. Cancer doesn't give you license to steal, Diane agreed, especially from your spouse. He could have talked to you, worked out a plan together. Despite their reassurance, I felt conflicted. Mark was ill, potentially fighting for his life. Could I really proceed with exposing his fraud under these circumstances? My moment of hesitation evaporated the next morning when I checked the private investigator's report. I'd hired him on Jonathan's recommendation to determine who might be accompanying Mark on his various unauthorized trips. The report was comprehensive and devastating. Mark wasn't planning these excursions with a medical caregiver or healthcare provider. His companion was Vanessa Daniels, his 29-year-old executive assistant. Hotel records, restaurant reservations, and flight bookings confirmed they'd been traveling together for at least 4 months. Photos showed them in intimate situations that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. My husband was stealing my money not just for cancer treatment, but to finance a lavish lifestyle with his mistress. The dual betrayal crystallized my resolve. Whatever sympathy his medical condition might have warranted evaporated in the face of this complete breach of trust. It was time to confront Mark with exactly what I knew, and what I had done to protect myself from his calculated deception. I was reviewing the final documentation package with Jonathan and Diane when my phone buzzed with a security alert. Mark had just used my compromised credit card to make an $8,900 purchase at a high-end electronics store 15 minutes from our home. He's getting bolder, Jonathan observed, using the card locally when he knows you could potentially see the charge immediately. He thinks I'm at work, I explained. I had maintained my normal schedule that morning, kissing Mark goodbye and driving away at my usual time. But instead of going to my office, I'd met with my legal team to finalize our strategy. This might be the perfect opportunity for confrontation, Diane suggested, catching him literally with the goods in hand. I agreed. After 15 years of marriage, I deserved to see Mark's face when he realized his scheme had failed. When I arrived home, Mark's car wasn't in the driveway yet. I positioned myself in our living room, the comprehensive evidence folder on the coffee table before me. Bank statements, security footage, private investigator reports, medical records, a complete documentation of his double life. At 2:37 p.m., I heard his key in the door. He struggled to enter, laden with shopping bags emblazoned with the logos of premium electronics brands. He didn't notice me at first, busy arranging his purchases on the entryway table with obvious satisfaction. "Successful shopping trip?" I asked, my voice calm despite the thundering of my heart. Mark startled, nearly dropping the sleek box he was removing from a bag. "Prudence, you're home early." "As are you." I nodded toward the packages. "Nice things." He recovered quickly, a practiced smile replacing his initial surprise. "Just some upgrades for my home office. The consulting business is taking off. Thought I deserved to invest in proper equipment." "With my money?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, quickly masked. "What are you talking about? I used my own funds." "No, Mark. You used the credit card connected to my decoy account, the one I created after I caught you photographing my banking information at 4 a.m. 3 weeks ago." The color drained from his face, but he rallied with unexpected indignation. "You've been spying on me? Setting traps?" "Protecting myself," I corrected. "As it turns out, with good reason." "You don't understand," he began, his tone shifting to one of aggrieved justification. "I'm sick. The treatments—" "I know about the lymphoma," I interrupted. "I also know about Vanessa." That stopped him cold. For a moment, genuine shock registered on his face, the realization that his carefully constructed deceptions had completely unraveled. Then, astonishingly, his expression morphed into something resembling relief. A small, almost amused smile played at his lips. "Well, I suppose that simplifies things." "Simplifies?" I echoed, caught off guard by his reaction. "The divorce," he clarified, setting down the electronics box and regarding me with newfound directness. "Vanessa and I have been discussing next steps. This just accelerates the timeline." I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. "You plan to divorce me after stealing my money?" He shrugged, dropping all pretense. "Don't I deserve nice things, Prudence? After 15 years with your obsessive planning and risk management, do you have any idea how suffocating your caution has been?" For a moment, anger threatened to overwhelm my carefully maintained composure. Then I recalled Jonathan's advice. Let him talk. Every admission strengthens your case. So I simply watched as Mark continued his self-justifying monologue, explaining how he'd earned access to my savings through years of tolerating my controlling personality, how his illness and new relationship had shown him what really matters in life. All the while, he remained oblivious to the fact that the accounts he'd emptied contained only a fraction of my assets, and that every word he spoke was being recorded by the security system I'd upgraded months ago. When he finally ran out of excuses, I smiled calmly and reached for the folder on the coffee table. "You're right about one thing, Mark. This does simplify matters." "What's this?" Mark asked as I handed him the folder, wariness replacing his self-righteousness. "A comprehensive accounting of your fraud," I replied evenly. "Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers from accounts you gained access to through identity theft. Security footage of you stealing my financial information. Documentation of purchases you've made with stolen funds. And just for good measure, evidence of your affair with Vanessa, including those lovely photos from your Napa weekend that you charged to my compromised credit card." His face contorted with disbelief as he flipped through the meticulously organized evidence. "You've been tracking me all this time?" "I've been protecting myself, Mark. It's what I do professionally, remember? Identify risks and mitigate them before disaster strikes." I stood and walked to the built-in bookcase, sliding aside a decorative panel to reveal a wall safe he'd never known existed. "The accounts you accessed were decoys, containing less than 5% of my actual assets. My real accounts remain secure and untouched." "You set me up," he accused, his voice hollow. "No, Mark. I gave you enough rope to hang yourself, which you proceeded to do with remarkable enthusiasm." I removed a second folder from the safe. "This contains the divorce papers my attorney has prepared, citing financial fraud and adultery. You'll note that I've been exceptionally generous given the circumstances. You keep your personal assets and retirement accounts. I keep mine. No alimony either direction. His eyes narrowed with sudden calculation. And if I refuse these terms? Then we moved to Plan B. I gestured toward the original folder. All of that evidence goes to the police, the district attorney, and your employer. Financial fraud involving this amount of money carries significant penalties, including potential prison time. Your medical condition might generate some sympathy, but the affair undercuts any claim that this was solely about healthcare costs. Mark's shoulders slumped as the full implications sank in. You've thought of everything. That's my job, I replied simply. The job you've always resented me for being good at. 1 month later, I sat in Jonathan's office for our final meeting. The divorce had been processed with surprising efficiency, and Mark had vacated our home without further dramatics. He didn't really have options, Jonathan observed, closing my file. The evidence was irrefutable. What did surprise me was the medical treatment plan he proposed to the court, Diane added. The actual costs were significantly lower than what he claimed when justifying his theft. I nodded, having already reached the same conclusion. He exaggerated the expenses to rationalize taking more than he needed. The cancer is real, but he's been using it as an excuse to finance his new life with Vanessa. The revelation should have hurt, but instead I felt only a detached sort of pity. Mark had constructed an elaborate justification for his betrayal, but at its core, his motivation was painfully mundane. A middle-aged man seeking excitement with a younger woman, willing to compromise his integrity and destroy his marriage in pursuit of that fantasy. Have you decided what you'll do with the house? Jonathan asked. I'm selling it. Too many memories, and frankly, I'm ready for a fresh start. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I've accepted a position with a firm in Portland, a significant promotion, actually. What I didn't mention was that the firm had been pursuing me for years, offers I'd always declined because Mark was established in Seattle. Another sacrifice I'd made for a marriage that had been slowly unraveling without my awareness. As I left Jonathan's office for the last time, my phone buzzed with a news alert. The tech company where Mark worked had announced significant layoffs amid an internal financial scandal. Mark's name appeared prominently in the article as one of the executives under investigation. I felt a moment of vindication, quickly followed by something more profound: indifference. Mark's future problems were no longer my concern. I had protected myself when it mattered most, and now I was free to build a new life, one founded on the self-reliance I'd always valued but had partially compromised in marriage. My mother had been right all along. Always have your own safety net. It was advice I would never again forget.